I wanted a cello double bass, please. I changed the tempo.
60 years ago, Georg Solti was one of Bartok's pupils in Budapest.
Yes, please.
Now he is his finest interpreter. He is rehearsing the great Concierto for orchestra for a performance in the Royal Festival Hall.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
Bartok wrote the concerto in 1943. He was living in America, an exile from Nazi-dominated Hungary. He was already seriously ill with leukemia when the conductor Kusevitsky commissioned an orchestral work. Bartok responded with this magnificent showpiece for the virtuoso players of Kusevitsky's Boston Symphony Orchestra. Bartok worked day and night at fever pitch and completed the concerto in only 2 months. It swiftly established itself as one of the most popular works for orchestra ever to be composed. Bartok was inspired by a desperate longing for his beloved Hungary. He merged this nostalgia with his intellectual skills, his fascination with fugal writing, and his use of complex rhythms. The melodic language evokes the folk music of Hungary, which he had so often recorded in his earlier life. And although every important orchestra in the world has it in its repertoire these days, the concerto remains a benchmark, a challenge for anybody who tackles it.
It is a challenge for the orchestra, for the individual player, and for the conductor. What are the challenges? First of all, complex rhythmical challenges are there. It's not written, all the 5 movements, not written in a single 4-4, 3-4, but changing that rhythmical elements all the time. Secondly, the question of internal balance, making a clear structure of that, although not a too complicated score, but it's rather essential that the main themes clearly projected, they're not covered by harmony or contrapoint or whatever. And thirdly, I think the most important aspect is it that you must have a conductor, should have a clear understanding East European music, folk music, dance music, all these elements which are here, so many of them, and many pinpoint the same origin, namely his Hungarian origin. Now, the essential point on the beginning of that piece, and he quotes that practically all the 5 movements, is that interval of a fourth, which is start in the cello and double bass like that. Very fast tremolo, and indicate a C, D, and a D flat, E flat. Now in that 6 bars I played you, here is a fourth interval, here, that one. Now the next one is a fourth. That's a fourth, and then again a fourth here, and a fourth here. Slight comma here, slight comma. Very good. Play the first a little longer. The second movement is a genuine, funny scherzo. It's a very interesting usage, the orchestra instruments. He's calling the movement, first of all, presentation of the couples, which by he is presenting always 2 instruments, starting with 2 bassoons who are presented in 6 intervals, and that is following. Then he goes on, and presenting the two oboes in terts, in threes. On. Then he goes on and presenting two clarinets in sevens, which is very strangely sounding like that. Accompagnato string. Would be nice to hear now the pizzicato second half first. Still don't hear you. Then we have two flutes who playing in fifths. Bring out. And then we have two trumpets who are playing in seconds, which muted sordino trumpets, which sounds like that. Don't slow me down. My sleeves is not too Then he brings a new element, a trio, which is the opposite of this very short-sounding scherzo, all legato, playing by brass instrument, which he didn't use until now. He then bringing back again the first part of the scherzo, but with a very strange alteration. He used now the trio, three instruments. The third one playing funny, like somebody get a little bit drunk in a pub in the night. And you saw me arriving to the very end of the movement, which ending up exactly as it started, namely with the side drum. The side drum which start the movement like this. We found that this piece, this beginning few bars, was written after the scherzo, so he thought that it would be nice to start with a new motif, with that motif, with only a rhythm, nothing else, just a rhythmical motif. And he finishes exactly the same way with that. And that's end the second movement. Very well, it will be very good. This little 6-minute piece belongs to one of the best orchestrated pieces in the literature, and this vintage Bartok is marvelous. I deeply love it. The third movement he calls elegy, elegia. This is quite the opposite of the second movement. This is full of nostalgia. This is night music. This is Hungary, somewhere in the pusta in the night, some faraway clarinet, the Hungarian clarinet sounding, which they call tarogató, with a nostalgic, beautiful oboe melody. That's not very gentle. Then we have a very difficult passage, which he obviously imagined that everybody is Chrysler and Paganini in this orchestra. There is a passage in the middle of the movement when he writes for the fourth string, for the G string, very high, to get very high up, and the chromatic, which is difficult to play, like that, in unisono, both the first and the second. So it means roughly 28 or 30 players unisono, which is on the piano very simple and very difficult, make an orchestra unisono. We had a bit of a problems with that rehearsal, but then they did very well. 2, 3. And take time here, I'll give you time here. 2, 3. Okay. Now we just do it a bit faster. Before you could on G string, D sharp, I give you time. Tam. That you really get that D sharp, and then move on. Come. So here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Is there any chance that that side of the house going to play a little longer? Or yo, pop, that one. You play very short. Play a little longer. Stick to that. Come on, the last moment. Now, one more tutti, please. If we can do tutti. That's fine. Now we can go back a few points and we move on. The fourth movement he calls intermezzo, but equally calls interrotto, so interrupted intermezzo. And we're coming to that why is interrupted, rudely interrupted, I can say that immediately. It's very interesting, he starts with an augmented force. As it would say, I can do it differently also. A unisono augmented force. And out of that comes this beautifully enchanting oboe, dancing oboe. As you hear, this is a very strange rhythm. He's using here 5/8 and later 5/8 and 7/8. That's it. There was, in my youth, I knew it very well, a Hungarian sort of cheap, fairly cheap song, which is a sort of operetta-ish song, which had, of course, the text, that's what he used really more than the music. The text was, how beautiful are you, Hungary, how beautiful. The original was, and went on. So rather very conventional, a sort of cheap melody. Now, Bartok used the beginning of it, without, of course, with a text, and does with that like that. Beautiful nostalgic melody we get out, and he develops on that until he brings back the oboe, dancing oboe reprise, until we rudely interrupt it. So. Shostakovich used in the Leningrad Symphony that motif as a scherzo. Some of you, the elderly of you, will recall this is the famous Maxim lead for the Merry Widow, Lehar. Now, Lehar was a favorite composer of Hitler. And Shostakovich knew that Hitler had two favorite operas, as he called it. One was the Lustige Witwe, other was the Meistersinger. Strange combination, but whatever. Shostakovich used in the Leningrad Symphony that motif as a scherzo. And that became a great hit in America. In end of 1942, 43 it was, every radio station played that scherzo. And we know from a letter from Bartok that irritated him very much. I understand that he was totally unknown. Nobody knew anything. There was this strange Hitler song which became a great hit in America. So here comes now his revanche to it. The few last notes in the fourth movement are like this. So quite rudely and crudely interrupted. And one clearly feels, and he felt it very clearly, that now enough darkness. Let's go into the light. Performance was in Boston, conducted by Kusevitsky. He said it was a marvelous performance. Bartok said it was a marvelous performance. He went there with his wife against the advice of his doctors. Kusevitsky said after the performance that this is the most important work the last 25 years, and it is an enormous sentence for a friend of Shostakovich. Very gentle, and non-espressivo, also the woodwind. I don't know, beside of Schubert, in the history of music, any more tragical life as his one, who ended up so little known, and such a genius who stamped this century so strongly and so really that people didn't recognize his genius. And shortly after, like a fire, became a marvelously well-known composer. I think it's only the life of Schubert who was even sadder because it was shorter. I don't find any example under our great geniuses the last 300 years who had such a tragical life as Bartok